because we are talking about content of a sexual nature. I advise you guys that it may not be appropriate for children, some of the things that we're going to say. So you may want to remove them out of the room, depending on, what is allowable in your home and, with your children. Okay, guys? Welcome all again. Greetings aside you. Greetings. Thank you as always for coming, for showing up, and everybody who is joining us on IG and on any platform that you're on, right? Because there's actually multiple platforms we're on today. Alafia, Hidden Beauty, thank you for joining as well. So happy everybody could come. So, I did a quick pre-episode survey on YouTube, and it was basically which orishas do you guys consider to be the most closely associated with sexual energy in the tradition. So the results were, oh, we got people in Lagos. Thank you, Lagos, Alafia. So the results came up. Oshun, most people thought that she was connected to sexual energy, which was absolutely no surprise to me, because that is the orisha that everybody's like, Oshun, sex and relationships and love and all of this good stuff. Shango, I was surprised that he came in as excuse me, low as he did, especially given his connection with Oshun. But you all said about 17%. Some people said Eshu 14%, Iyami 11%. The reality is that all of them are connected to sexual energy. Likewise are other orishas, and I'm going to get into that topic really deep and show the interrelation between each of these particular orishas. And there are others as well, but I wanted to emphasize these and a couple of more that are really prominent when it comes to sexual energy. Alafia, Lidria, thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. I see some people, Lagos, Niger. Thank you all for joining as always. So let's just get started, guys, and jump into it. So we're going to start off by just kind of understanding sexual taboos and what they are and what they mean. We got to understand that sex is definitely more than physical, right? It affects every aspect of our being, really. It affects everything that we do, because what does sex do? It creates, right? Creates human life, and without it, we don't have our ancestral lineage. We don't have our progeny. Life cannot continue. It's very important, and it's very much so sacred, and should be treated as such. So that's why there are a lot of things that definitely surround sex, how we do it, why we do it, when we do it, etc. Right? So we have to keep that in mind, because it can affect us in so many ways, for good and for not so good reasons, and in not so good ways, so to speak. So we definitely, there are taboos surrounding, the who, when, what, where, why, and even how, right? Yeah, so there are some taboos that are related to sexual positions and things like that. And we're going to dig into a lot of these things as we go along. Understand, guys, every time that a person has sex, right, they connect their essence to someone else, whether it be you, somebody else, whoever may be involved in these dynamics. So you want to be very, very careful with this, because when you're connecting with somebody else's essence, you're effectively connecting with their destiny, whatever their destiny may be. Now, obviously, this can serve a very beneficial purpose for you if you're connecting with someone who has an amazing destiny, and you can actually come in and benefit from some of that essence. Likewise, the opposite is true. And it's not so much just their destiny, but also how they are living it out, because somebody can have an amazing destiny in front of them, but because they're not living in alignment, they're not experiencing the beauty of it. Okay. If a person that you decide to join with sexually in intercourse carries any type of kind of unresolved pain, trauma, confusion, dysfunction, etc., that same energy can definitely connect with your energetic field and cause you the same type of trauma that they are having. And you may not even be doing anything wrong. You just start in a relationship with this individual. You start having sex with them specifically, not even just, like a relationship where you're dealing with abstinence or chastity or things like that. But when you're engaging with them sexually, you will oftentimes find your life start to go down the same path as their life. Your life could have been really excellent beforehand, and then you start to deal with this person, and your life could just start going down, and you may not understand why. This happens quite frequently. You don't understand why, and it's because of the person that you connected your essence with. Obviously, the opposite is true, which is a great thing, because sex is meant to be good. It's not meant to be something negative. It's just all about how we utilize this sacred energy for our good. So when you are aligned with the right sexual partner, and this could be, outside of a marriage situation, even the notion before, like you could be married to somebody, and if they don't have a great essence, or, they're playing around with their destiny or what have you, you could suffer, even if you go through the official marriage and all of those types of things, right? So, again, if the alignment is there, if people are walking in order, doing the right things, it's not necessarily perfect because nobody is. But if they're trying their best to walk in alignment, walking in integrity, gentle character, things like that, you can absolutely benefit from that as well, right? You're saying you learned that connecting with the energy the hard way. Yes, gotten lessons here myself with that one. So, it happens. That's the reality. Unfortunately, in today's world, so many people are learning these lessons, because, they don't treat sex with the sacred nature that it truly is about, right? So, sex can function as medicine, just like Marvin Gaye said, right? Sexual healing. It's a thing. It's true. It's real. But it can also act as a poison, right? Like, what is it? Bill DeVoe said, that girl is poison. That's a reality. That's the life that we live, and we have to be careful, right? So, now jumping into Ifá, what Ifá says about all of these dynamics. So, first and foremost, there are so many different taboos that are related to sexual energy, sacred boundaries, and things like that are identified in the Odu. They are designed for us to develop our character in better ways, for us to ensure that we are engaging in consensual connections, aligned connections, even so, and also communal order. Because again, all of that flows together. We're talking about heritage and lineage when we're talking about sex, because as we all know, children can come through that dynamic, whether we desire for them to or not, right? And so you connect with somebody, you connect with an unaligned individual, and you make children through that dynamic, and your children can suffer tremendously because of that, because of the energy, from that individual. Alafia, Oshun, Timmy, is it Topi? If I'm saying it wrong, please forgive me. But Alafia, thank you for joining. Thank everybody who is joining us. Now, it's very important, like when you do get taboos related to sex, to not violate them. Because if you do, just like violating any other taboo, it can cause disruption and disharmony, imbalance in your life, also in the life of your family, right? Your immediate family, even so your extended family, communities at large, society, etc. Because again, who you have sex with can make a huge difference, especially when we're talking about procreation, making children, our offspring. It it can affect so much, and so many things can happen that we're not meant to be, because you engage in the activity with the wrong person. Okay. Um, Sexual desire is natural. You should have sexual desire. If you don't have any sexual desire whatsoever, and you're at past a certain age of maturity, and I'm not talking about like young children, but there's a certain stage biochemically where our bodies will automatically push us towards that desire, right? So normally that happens around puberty, 12, 13 years old. When you start to get the desire, I'm not saying when you need to start actually having sex, but when, those hormones and things like that begin to kick in, this is natural, right? So sex is not looked at as something to be shunned, like you shouldn't have sex, it's wrong, it's dirty. Or no, it's a beautiful thing. It's a sacred thing in the tradition. It's just that you should be engaging in it responsibly with the right person and in the right ways, okay? Inordinate sexual acts often result in misalignment for the person that you're dealing with. It can absolutely attract a jogun. Those are those evil spirits that can come in and influence or interrupt your health. And I'm not just talking about through sexually transmitted diseases. Obviously, it can impact you in that way as well, but it can absolutely impact your mental health. There's some people who have gone literally crazy because of the sexual connections that they've had. It can impact, because it can have such an impact on your emotional and your mental health. It can obviously impact your body in ways beyond just the sexually transmitted diseases. As I said before, it can impact your family. It can impact your finances. Person that you're having sex with, they can actually help you to increase or improve your finances, or they can deplete your finances just through the act of sex. So here, I'm not just talking about like a gold digger or something like that, or somebody who's you get with somebody who has more finances than you. I'm talking about you guys could be like at the same level financially, you come together, and because of their circumstances, you end up you can end up going up or down depending on that person's energy that you're dealing with. And of course, you can stay in the same space. But when you are with the right person, you'll see that your finances, both of your finances, will start to just improve and increase because of the synergy that you guys are creating when you're engaging in sexual intercourse, right? And the opposite of that can be true as well. Social ills, so many other ills can come out of it as well. Okay. Some people have specific taboos that relate to their sexual capabilities, or what they should be doing, I should say, sexually. Some people have very specific taboos connected to that, their sexual activity. And so they will get this in a reading, a divination session. It could be an individual session that they're just getting on a regular basis, or it could actually be divination that comes through an initiation process or something like that. Okay. We're going to get to that. Oshun, thank you for your question. She's asking, well, I'm assuming it's a female. If it's not, forgive me. What does Ifá say about self-pleasure and masturbation? We're going to get to that. I think that's actually coming, well, a little bit. I'd say maybe 10 minutes or so. I'll get to that because I want to talk about that in depth. So, going back to this notion though, whenever you do get sexual taboos, this is going to govern you individually. It could be for a short period of time, right? Or it could be for lifelong. It just depends on, it's because even in personal readings, it could still be something that's going to impact you permanently. But definitely, if it's a taboo that comes up in your initiation process, it could be long lasting, right? And so they can impact so many different things. Even so, like especially for temporary taboos, it can impact like the particular days of the week that you may be able to have sex, or that you should avoid sex, or what have you. Certain times of the day, right? Even certain positions, as I said before, like there are like Odu verses that speak on you not even being able to have sex, what you call it, from the back, doggy style, that type of thing. So there are so many different taboos that can impact people at different times, even supposed to be specific periods, right? That you may have to refrain from having sex. It could be a few days that you get a reading, like you're not supposed to engage in that, just depending on the nature of your situation. Okay. Other taboos are applied universally, and we are going to discuss them in the depth here as we go along to get some of your questions out. Okay. Let's see. You said that's a great question. Okay. Thank you for that, Oshun. Okay, so Ifa perspectives on sex and ritual work, because I got a lot of questions related to this as well, like when, should you be having sex or shouldn't be having sex when it comes to ritual work. So it's common for people to be advised to refrain from sexual activity before or after, especially like ritual baths, cleansing baths for a short period of time. It could be a few hours, it could be like 24 hours, just depends. High level consecration ceremonies and things like that, other forms of sacred work. Okay. So you don't want to mix up your energy with other people's energy during certain times. And you will be told that if it is applicable to you. Abstinence was a question that came up in several different ways. So got 3 or 4 different questions, but the gist of it is basically when should you be sexually abstinent? So typically you do not have to, like, just regular ritual work when you're feeding your orishas and things like that. You don't have to refrain from sex, but you should be clean, right? So if you have sex prior to going into engage with an orisha pot or something like that, you want to clean yourself up properly. You don't just get out of the bed and go straight and feed SU or any other orisha for that matter. You want to have yourself ritually clean. I would advise even to wait a little bit of time, depending on how long it takes you to clean yourself up or what have you. But it's not appropriate to like go right in without being properly clean from that situation. Otherwise, abstinence is sometimes required or recommended for a few days during major ceremonies. So I talked about that before in the initiation episode. You shouldn't be engaging in sex during that period. It's usually a 3-day window, varies depending on temple. So you want to not get involved in those types of activities during that time. If you have issues with that, you probably got more, 3 days. If you can't wait, then it's probably many more issues going on with you than just that sexual notion. Like you just got to have it then. So you definitely want to get some things going on there. You said you saw the other question pop up. I don't see it now. Oh, okay. I understand. So you're saying Ifa teaches to be careful who you join with. Promiscuity mixes of persons, Ashe karma, and social energies. Absolutely. Yes, that's the discussion. Those are the things that I've been saying. You got to be very, very careful of who you are with. There are situations, unfortunately, sometimes people will be told that they shouldn't be involved with certain types of people, and they continue to do so, and they experience the consequences of it. So, someone asked about, can you have sex during OC Ifa? So this, for people who aren't familiar with it, this is the regular time frame. It's usually every 4 days, but nowadays most people just do it like once a week. It's common to just do it on Sundays or what have you, when devotees focus on worshiping and feeding their Ifa icon, and they're connecting with his energy on a higher level on that day. So either once a week or every 4 days, depending on that person's orientations to the tradition, if they engage in that process. So that's people who have the icon and they work with it in that way on a regular basis. So typically you can have sex on this day unless you have personal taboos that indicate that you shouldn't, right? So that is usually going to be on an individual level. That being said, there are some lineage, some elays or what have you, who forbid sexual activity on this day. They say, it's just a time you're going to honor Oromila and you should not be. And that's for everybody within that temple or that house. However, that's not really common from what I know about or what I have seen. So, if you're working with a temple that requires this, if you feel aligned with that particular guideline, you should follow. If you don't, then, you don't have to. I would ask, if I were you, if you feel like this is not something that you want to do, that it's not part of you, just ask and ensure that it's not a personal taboo for you, and you should be good, right? I got a really good question too about a Babalawo, and this would apply to Babalawos or Eonifis. It's just that the question came in the orientation of a Babalawo. So, what sexual taboos or restrictions does an Ifa priest or priestess have when it comes to the tradition? So, generally, they're going to follow the same guidelines that everybody else is required to follow, with those added layers of discipline that's inherent in their role. They should be following that. Does it always happen? Absolutely not. But in general, Babalawo should exercise a higher level. Babalawo and Eonifa should operate within a higher level of integrity than the average person because of the nature of their role. So, they're telling other people they should or should not be doing based on the guidance of Ifa. So it's not like in a kind of sermon capacity or holier than thou, but when they get a reading, they're telling other people how to operate. So obviously they should try their best to operate in a rightful way, walk in Iwa Pele, gentle character. They're not perfect, so they're not always going to be do the right thing as they should, but that is the reality of what typically goes on when it comes to the tradition or what have you. Let's see. You're saying, sorry guys, Hidden Beauty, you're saying when I attended Catholic school in my formative years, I was taught that sex was sacred. Be careful who you have sex with. And that's pretty much the same notion in Ifa. And even you mentioned in Catholicism, I think that even this question about the Babalawo comes through that dynamic because, in that system, the Pope, even nuns or what have you, are supposed to be abstinent. They practice abstinence as a way of life. So sometimes people may think that the same notion goes for like a Ifa priest or priestess or something like that, which is not necessarily the case, right? You're saying hearing a high pitched noise in the background. You guys hearing? You picking up some noise from me? It might be my system because it is going in and out. I think it's the fan on my laptop. Sorry about that, guys. You saying here, spectacular 3, 2, 1. I was taught to never approach shrines or sacred items after sex without cleansing. Can you expand your wisdom? Yes, so that's something I literally just talked about, is that you should not engage in sexual activity right after you finish. I mean, you should not go to your shrine right after you finish engaging in sexual activity. You guys are hearing it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try my best, but I think it's this laptop. I think it is making some kind of noise. I don't know what, if much, I can do about it at the very moment. But I'm going to try to keep pressing through. I hope you guys can hear me. So yes, so going back to that notion, definitely you shouldn't go right away to it. You should clean yourself up properly before you just go straight into doing your worship, right? So SSC, you're saying, how do you suggest a devotee of Orisha and Ifa find a wife in this era of promiscuity? Very good question. I would say through Ifa, right? So if you are actively looking for a mate, there are definitely rituals and work that can be done to help you to find an aligned mate. We talked about that more so in the Akoshi episode on like love and romance. I can't remember the title of it here, but it is on my YouTube channel and also on Spotify, where I talked about those dynamics, and it can help you find a wife or a husband or what have you, somebody who is aligned with you. So you don't have to deal with all of that. There are remedies for everything in the tradition. So you guys are saying you can't hear me clearly. Perfect. Thank you for that. So with going back to the Babalawo, sorry for interrupting that conversation, guys, but When it comes to a babalawo or Nefertu, abstinence is required or recommended during certain major rites and ceremonies. So a lot of times they will refrain when they are taking somebody through an initiation ceremony. And obviously, if they're going through the initiation ceremony themselves, or they're doing some kind of major ceremony for someone that requires a high level of cleanliness in their area, they will refrain. But as a general rule, like they just have the same ones that everybody else has, right? Elay rules are their personal taboos, may include other restrictions or what have you, depending on their orientation and where they come from and what they work with when it comes to the tradition or what have you. So yeah. Yes. It is fluctuating, guys. But if you guys can hear me clearly, we're gonna keep moving. Sorry about the noise situation. All right, transitioning to self pleasure. So this is the question that I get most often. I literally get this question probably about at least once a month, right, in my DM or an email or something like that. When it comes to self pleasure, masturbation. So we're going to talk about this. How does Ifá view masturbation, self pleasure, these dynamics? So there's no specific Odu that outright forbids you from masturbating, right? Or tells you that you should not engage in it. That's not the reality in the tradition. However, you got to understand the purpose of sexual energy, right? It is beyond just the physical. The goal is to unite masculine and feminine energy in order to strengthen the emotional bonds between two people to create offspring. Offspring is for procreation, to have children, right? And to manifest other health benefits, okay? So even so, getting a little bit into it from a kind of scientific perspective, if you will, during orgasm, the body releases chemicals, so that dopamine, oxytocin, etc., that support the pleasurable aspects of sex. It has to be pleasure in order for us to want to engage in it so that we can present offspring into the world, right? But it also helps with other health benefits. It helps people to relax, to chill a little bit. Even so, helps with the immune function, right? And obviously, you can get those benefits when you are engaging in self pleasure. You can't get the benefits of an emotional connection or obviously having offspring when engaging in self pleasure. It also generates a specific essence of ashe, right? That a combined ashe of two people when it's engaged in that way, when two people are having sex, it can manifest other things, even so, like prosperity, creative endeavors. It can manifest a lot of things, even beyond just physical children, right? This is what a lot of times in the new age places or schools of thoughts or what have you, they call like the sex magic, right? When you use that sexual magic to manifest. That's a real thing. It can happen, but you want to use it for the right purpose, right? So whenever you're expressing sexual pleasure, self pleasure, I should say, in balance or what have you. Well, when sex is expressed in balance, it strengthens your overall well being. Self pleasure, by contrast, though, it does not produce that same energetic exchange because you're not doing it with another person. It's not manifesting obviously offspring, because that cannot happen unless you have the right constituents put together, the egg and the sperm, so that children can come through that dynamic. All right. That being said, whenever you do engage in masturbation, right, occasionally, mindfully, it does not pose a moral violation in and of itself, because again, there is no Odu that says that you cannot engage in masturbation, but it also does not result in a beneficial good, if you understand what I mean by that. All right. That being said, if it's persistent, if it's consistent, compulsive, or anything like that, if it's inordinate, if you're in a space where that's all you are doing, it can drain your energy, can dull your sensitivity, and definitely disconnect you from others, because again, sexual energy is meant to bond two people. So if you're just doing it by yourself and you're doing it to the detriment of not being with somebody else, and you're doing it all the time, then you start to disassociate or disconnect yourself with other people. And so that becomes inordinate, and it is not good. It's not beneficial for you at that time. All right. So you want to definitely honor any type of sexual relationship from a space of balance. All right. The power comes from that connectivity and that creativity that comes through sexual energy. So I'm not the one to tell anybody not to engage in self pleasure, because there are some legitimate reasons I think that people should do it, or I won't say should do it, that's the wrong word, that people do engage in it, right? So I would much rather you engage in self pleasure than to just put yourself with any and everybody and mix your energy up with other people's energy that it shouldn't be mixed up with, and that cause you so many other problems in your life. Right. That being said, it shouldn't be inordinate. Nothing we do should be inordinate for that matter. So that's a reality as well. Okay, you're saying it's going in and out. Sorry about that. That you're talking about the connection. I don't know. I'm sorry about. So spectacular, you're saying self-pleasure involves releasing a portion of your own creative force. It's a portion of your own creative force, but again, we're talking about two opposing forces to actually manifest the fullness of some creative energy. So yeah, definitely you can, utilize it, and you are manifesting part of your own creativity, at least for a male, when it comes to like releasing semen or what have you. A woman doesn't release her eggs, obviously, when she's masturbating or what have you. She's releasing other aspects of her being. Greetings, Lance. Thank you for joining us. You're saying when done out of loneliness, sadness, addiction, Eshu sees it as a loss of Ashe, wasting creative energy that could strengthen your aura. Absolutely. It is. That's a situation that you got to deal with when it's inordinate. That's what I said before. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, or you're doing it too much, it can cause problems. Okay. That's anything in life. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, or you're doing it you just overdoing it, it's too much, you're gonna end up with some issues in your life. Bruce, you're saying oral pleasure. I guess you're asking about oral pleasure. We're gonna talk about that as well. I do have that plan to talk about Ashe spectacular. And you're making some really great points. So thank you for that. Definitely. So, pornography, fetishes, sexual addiction. What does Ifá say about these things? So, when it comes to these notions, these behaviors are seen as distortions of sexual energy, period, point blank, right? They disconnect you from reality as it is, all right? We're not supposed to engage in any of these. Okay, and it's not from a space of shame. I do want to say that. So it's not like, I'm condemning anybody. If you are dealing with these, definitely Ifá offers help. Ifá offers guidance to help you overcome these dynamics. But the understanding is that these are distortions, right? They disrupt the natural rhythm of desire. They cause overstimulation at the end of the day. And so then you're just tapping into the pleasure centers of the brain consistently. And you get into a space where you can't come down from that particular high. And so what happens is then you need it on repeat. It serves as a drug in that capacity. It's no different than somebody being addicted to cocaine or alcohol or any other drug that they're dealing with. So you have to be very, very careful with those types of things. Okay. Your body begins to just become acclimated to that artificial stimulation to the point where real intimacy becomes a problem after so long, if that's all that you engage in. is, the pornography, the fetish, is the whatever the addictive behavior is, even if it's not connected specifically to pornography or a fetish. If you just, want sex inordinately, that's all you think about, that's all you can do. You can't do anything else for your need or your desire for sex, then yeah, it's inordinate, and you need to definitely seek help for that reality. Okay. Alrighty. So going back, um, going back to the conversation. So this imbalance can lead to emotional detachment, social disconnection, as I've said before, lack of focus. You're not doing anything else. Hey, you need to really figure it out, because you're not fulfilling your destiny at that point if all you're doing is focusing on sexuality and things of that nature, right? It even encourages us to be self-aware, to be self-controlled. That's part of Eva Pele, gentle character. Everything should be done in moderation and in balance. And when it's not, then there is a problem. Sexual energy is sacred, even so going to the notion of pornography specifically, because pornography is a form of voyeurism. You're watching other people have sex unless you're participating in it yourself, and then it becomes a form of exhibitionism. Either way, both are inordinate, because sex is meant to be sacred. It is not meant to be something for people to just, look on and get pleasure from that. Like, the pleasure is actually supposed to come from two people putting their energies together and pleasuring or pleasing themselves. So that's the way it's sacred. It's sacred. And I've had this conversation with people in the past, because they're like, well, what if you are watching pornography with your partner? The same dynamic goes, because sex is meant to be sacred. It's an act between a man and a woman. It's not meant to be put on display for the world to see. Okay. And if you're having issues with getting stimulated and you're with a partner, right, then that is definitely an issue. That means something is out of balance with you or your partner. If it's the same for both of you guys, can't find stimulation outside of watching somebody else engage in sexual activity, then you need to figure out how to get back in alignment with what you're doing. So yes. You're asking, can demonic energy entities travel through generations? Absolutely. Yeah. The spirits travel from generation to generation. They'll attach themselves from one person to another, even while that person is alive, or they can attach themselves definitely when somebody transitions and, it goes to the family. But usually it's happening simultaneously, right? You're saying you cannot waste creative energy. That's all the energy I got. Usually, it's not a good thing to, like, we were given every aspect of our being for a purpose, and we're supposed to use it in order to walk in our destined path, not just, to waste it. And that's for anything. Like, even if you just literally just sit back and just scroll on social media all day long, you're actually wasting your energy. And that's not good either. So that's a whole nother conversation, because a lot of people are actually addicted to social media and other things. So it's a reality. But of course, the conversation here is about sexual energy, and you definitely want to be very, very careful with that. Sexual fantasies. What does Ifá say about that? So Ifá recognizes, our imagination is a creative tool. We use it to visualize, to manifest. It's the same thing with anything else that you're working with, right? If you want to manifest prosperity in your life, if you want to manifest good health, if you want to manifest a relationship, things like that. So just your mind, your mental activity, your fortitude to be able to visualize and manifest things, that's a good thing, right? And you're going to use that same energy in any type of sexual fantasy. So that doesn't automatically make them bad or harmful or what have you, right? However, the content of your fantasies, and of course the intent of your sexual fantasies, do matter. They matter a lot. So whenever you're fantasizing about something that brings in a form of deceit, or harm, or you're attaching yourself to somebody or some notion, whatever it may be, of something that is not related to your current commitment, so like your spouse, your partner, whoever you are with, then sexual fantasies can cause ill will and get out of balance as well. So you want to be careful with that, right? So you can't have, if you have fantasies or what have you with you and your partner and they're balanced and they make sense and they're not violating other taboos, it's okay. In general, it's okay, right? But if you're uncertain about, like, I don't know if this is okay what I'm doing here, then you definitely need to seek out counsel, either through a reading or talk to a trusted Ifá priest or priestess that you work with to discern whether whatever you are fantasizing about, not fetishizing, but fantasizing, because those are two different things. You need to tap in to make sure that those things are right according to your destined path or what have you. How does Ifá interpret high or low sexual desire? And I talked about this a little bit before, but I did get this question beforehand. So Ifá sees variations, right, when it comes to high or low sex drive. You got to understand that, your genetic blueprint is going to be a little bit different than the next person over. So some people just naturally have really, really high sex drive. And it's not about whether they're a man or a woman. Some women have really high sex drive. Some men have lower sex drive, so what have you. And so just by the notion that somebody has a high sex drive, then that usually is not indicative of a problem. It just depends on how they wield that energy. Low sex drive can be a little bit different, especially if it's inordinately low to the point where they do not want to engage in sexual activity with their spouse, if they're married or something like that. That can present many challenges, obviously, in a relationship, right? It can also be shaped by spiritual and physical phenomena, your sex drive, that is, okay? So it can fluctuate, even so with, cosmic changes. We'll see, like, when Oshun or Shango energy is more prevalent, is more influential in the cosmos, people's sex drives tend to go up naturally if they are well positioned. It just depends on where they are and what they're doing within the cosmological order of things, right? So it is very common for those things to happen, very, very natural. And it's also common for it to, drop when there are other energies or other forces at play, right? In balance, this energy is going to fuel our connectivity with our mates and the creativity, right, for us to make children or make other dynamics related to that sexual energy. In imbalance, it can cause us to be restless. It can cause us to be depleted of our energy. Understand too that there are physical things. So acute and chronic illnesses or conditions can fluctuate a person's libido or what have you, right? So your changes are just naturally, there are changes that will naturally occur. Obviously, especially with women, we go through so many different changes throughout our lives. So puberty, menstruation, pregnancy, menopause, all of those things can impact a woman's sex drive, right? Increase it or decrease it, just depending on the nature of things. Men also have natural fluctuations of their sex drive. Puberty is going to play a huge role of when a man starts to really desire to have sex, or, well, I won't say a man because of his puberty, he's still a boy, but he's starting to get into his manhood at that particular stage. So that's usually going to fire him up when those hormones start to kick in. And usually early in life, a man is going to have really, really high sex drive. Now, obviously, health conditions can make that fluctuate as well, right? Likewise, the changes in his life, because men go through a form of menopause as well, right? So what they call it, midlife crisis, right? It's the same thing that we go through but it is hormonal. It does have some hormonal dynamics to it, not in the same way as women, because our whole ecosystem when it comes to menstruation is built off hormonal fluctuations or what have you. Men, that happens through social dynamics and other things as well, but that can and does impact a man's sexual desire. So all men aren't just like want sex all the time, day and night and things like that. It just depends on the individual, right? Now, if there are persistent imbalances in a person's sex drive and it can't be directly linked to like health problems, there may be some type of spiritual phenomenon that's going on. And you would want to go ahead and check that out if you're dealing with something. Even so, if it is related to your health, Ifá does have remedies to deal with that as well. So it just depends on what you're going through, right? If you're dealing with like excessive uncontrollable desires that can indicate some sexual spirits at play, and you definitely want to check that out and deal with that, because that's never a good thing, because it can cause you a whole lot of problems in life in so many different ways. Okay. Chronic sexual disinterest can result from spiritual blockages too. Somebody can absolutely cause you problems when it comes to putting hexes or curses and things like that on you to cause you not to want to be with your mate, right? And thus you end up maybe breaking up or having a whole lot of problems in your relationship. So if you are dealing with that and it's causing problems in your relationship, 100%, 100% check that out, because it's not a good thing to not have sexual desire either. If you're an adult, you've gone through those stages of puberty and everything has worked out as it should, you should have sexual desire. It's not a bad thing. So definitely get some type of reading if you need to do so. 9Bucky2, you're saying this is going to be a YouTube video. It is currently a YouTube video. I am on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at present. And so you can catch the live replay on any of those platforms, but definitely on YouTube. It will also be on Spotify, I think on Wednesday. It should be on Spotify on Wednesday. Okay. So yes. She does the live and record them and then post them on the channel. Well, it's actually being recorded right now on YouTube, so it'll be there once we finish. Let me take a few more questions that I got on the platform. Let's see. Greetings, Samantha. Thank you for showing up. So, you said, what does Ifá say about polyamory? So I'm not going to get deep into that because this conversation is more about sexuality. And I did talk about polygamy and in a different live stream. I'm trying to think of which one it is. But I do have a live stream where I talked about polygamy in more depth. But there are actually Odu verses that say that it is good for a man to be married to multiple women. It doesn't speak on polyandry. So there's not a thing in Yoruba culture for a woman to be married to multiple men. That's what I mean by polyandry. But for polygamy, absolutely. There are verses that say that, let me qualify this, that it is good for a man to be in a relationship or be married rather to multiple women. But this is on a case-by-case basis. This is not something that is applicable to every man. This is if it comes up in your reading, right? So it could be an Odu verse that could speak directly to that. Even so, it's from a responsible perspective. It's not just so that he can go and have sex all day long with a bunch of different women, right? It serves a very important purpose according to his destiny, okay? And so that's why it would come up. Spectacular, you're saying issue is the gatekeeper. Sex is one of those gates. It can bring creation, pleasure, confusion, depending on how it's used, just like you mentioned earlier. Absolutely. And we're going to get into Eshu's role as well, Eshu, Yami, and a few others, Orisha roles when it comes to sexual interplay. So moving forward, Ifa perspectives on sex within relationships. Now, so I got a question about infidelity. What does Ifa say about infidelity? So any type of deceitful acts when it comes to intimacy within relationships and bonds and things like that, that creates confusion. That creates problems in relationships. So Ifa does not condone that. And going back to the question about polygamy. So polygamy absolutely is allowable in in the tradition as a whole. You don't even have to necessarily get that in a reading to be involved in a polygamous relationship. However, there are certain Odu that can come up for a man that says that it would be more beneficial for him to be involved in such. There are also Odu that says that he shouldn't be involved in multiple relationships. So it just depends. It's not like it's just a catch-all, you should be in this relationship. That being said, polygamy is not the same thing as cheating on a spouse. Polygamy is a consensual relationship between multiple individuals. Okay, so that's consent. They know about each other. He is taking care of them properly. So it's not like just man going around sleeping with a bunch of women, making, being a baby daddy all over the place, this type of stuff. He's actually taking responsibility and caring for the women and so forth. But when it comes to infidelity, that is cheating. That's when a person is going outside of their marital relationship and being with other people sexually, and that's not considered to be a good thing. So you definitely want to restore those dynamics. It's best to seek Ifa especially when it comes to things like confession or what have you, just seek Ifa to see what to do in your particular situation. There is ritual work and things like that that you can do to restore balance within that relationship. Again, that's something that you do on a one-on-one basis. Um, so that's a good question. Now, Bucky, you're asking infidelity in a marriage sense or a boyfriend and a girlfriend sense. Herein, I'm specifically referring to marriage, not boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. I am not negating the validity of those connections because I don't personally necessarily see marriage just from a Western worldview, because that can get tricky too, because it's just about really a piece of paper when marriage is heavily contractual beyond just two people signing a piece of paper. When we go into traditional cultures and things like that, it's actually a contract between the whole bloodlines, not just those two people. So it's entered into in a different way. That being said, modern day girlfriend boyfriend relationships do not qualify under traditional culture. So when I speak about marriage, I'm speaking about marriage more so from a traditional perspective than just the perspective of the way we do it in the Western world. Because there are people even here in America and other parts of the Western world who are engaged in polygamous relationships, but they're not full on recognized because the legal system doesn't recognize them. But I absolutely consider them legitimate when they go through the proper channels from the traditional perspective, right? When it comes to Ifa or either whatever other system you may be engaged in, like Islam or Hebrew Israelite and things like that. So, but I'm not just talking about boyfriend girlfriend relationships. To answer your question, how does Ifa approach premarital sex? So it recognizes, sexual relationships as sacred exchanges of energy, as I said before, and intention and so forth and so on. Now, there's no Odu, again, that says you cannot engage in premarital sex. It's not like the Bible where it says you should not fornicate, so to speak. However, it is very much so a cultural taboo to engage in premarital sex, specifically for women, especially in this day and age. Traditionally, it was for both, but you're not about to tell a Yoruba man not to engage in premarital sex. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to do it with a Yoruba woman in today's world. But, technically, a woman is should be pure, so to speak, before she gets into her marital bed. But there's no Odu that says you can't have sex before you get married or something like that. Now you're asking about, can you speak about Babalawos who make sexual advances to God, children or clients? So I'm gonna say this briefly on that subject. I don't want to get too deep in it because I want to position myself in a space of judging anyone. It definitely should be taken with a whole lot of caution, especially if this is somebody's godchild or their client or what have you. So you don't want to mix dynamics in that way, especially from a space of presenting information that Ifá said this or what have you, because unfortunately this is going on a lot in today's world where people are presenting information that's supposed to be coming from a reading it, but it's really from them, and they're saying, well, Ifá says you're supposed to marry me, or Ifá says you're supposed to have sex with me. That's never the case, because there's no Odu that will tell anybody that they're supposed to have sex with or marry a specific person by name. Now you could ask about the names and things like that. There are Odu that tell women that they should be married to a Babalawo, that it would be good for them to be in a marital relationship with a Babalawo. That being said, it's not forced, and it is definitely not forced that they are supposed to be married or be in a relationship with any specific person. So there you're bordering on issues related to ethics, in my opinion. So that's not something that I really, I subscribe to or believe that you enter those types of dynamics lightly. Not to say you can't be in a relationship with a Babalawo and their godchild or what have you. A client cannot be in a relationship, but it should definitely be consensual, and it should be based on clear judgment from both parties, not somebody telling you that you're supposed to be in a relationship with them, right? What are you saying here? Oh, so you're saying fornication. Yeah, that's from the biblical perspective that you shouldn't have sex before you get married or what have you. And again, it is very much so cultural. Don't, misunderstand me when I say that. Even though it's not in no do, it's a very much so a cultural thing that, a man would present his daughter as pure when she gets married or what have you. And it's best for, the community or so forth and so on. But that's just not a reality in today's world. You're not gonna find that too much. You're saying thank you, SU, for granting this lady a voice and allowing your wisdom to speak to her. Ashe, thank you so much, spectacular. Let's see. I test drive every vehicle. I'm from Michigan. Hey, that's on you. You got to make the decision that's going to work for you in your life. That's the reality. You said not every single one, just the ones that you like. Hey, I hope it works out for you, my dear. Hope it does. You're saying you didn't get to hear the answer regarding the marital girlfriend or boyfriend. So I'm speaking about marital relationships, just to give that quickly. So I did answer it in a little more depth, so you can kind of go backwards. YouTube, it'll be there to get the in-depth answer. But I'm speaking from a marriage perspective when I say these things. All right. Can divorce or remarriage be taboo in Ifá? So Ifá doesn't universally forbid divorce. There are some times where it is actually better for two people to get a divorce. It doesn't overall forbid remarriage either, right? But it can be taboo for certain people in certain situations. So it could come up in your reading, or if you're considering that dynamic, you would definitely want to ask about it. I would encourage anybody, before you get married, before you get divorced, or things like that, you should always ask Ifá if you're practicing the tradition about those dynamics. Some people are absolutely bound spiritually to remain with a particular partner that they are with. Separating can cause a whole lot of problems for both parties involved. It happens frequently. So you do want to be careful if you're in a situation where you're like tired of your mate I would say ask Ifá what to do. There are remedies that can help you guys to work things out. I talked about that before briefly with coaching and things like that. I have a whole episode on the YouTube channel about that. So I encourage you, to do those things, because if it says it's going to be problems, there are going to be problems. It's not that it can't be worked out, but you can experience quite a bit of hardships if you're told not to leave your mate or what have you. Okay. Um, some people can be advised not to remarry because their aura doesn't support another relationship of that nature during this lifetime for that individual. So that can be a reality. But again, it's not holistically forbidden for everybody that you can't get a divorce or that you can't get remarried. Like, again, in Catholicism, because I know that that's where these types of questions are coming from. Let me I got a few comments on YouTube before I get to that. Greetings, Howard. Thank you for joining us. You said, do your spiritual baths for real, y'all. I'm gonna do a live on it soon. Okay, definitely. The spiritual baths are important. Spiritual soaps, all of those dynamics. Aside, you said, does Yoruba culture or Ifá recommend a minimum age for sexual intercourse? That's a really good question. It's not really about a minimal age. It's about like getting married, right? So again, we're talking about sexual intercourse within the context of a marriage. Usually that's going to happen between two people who are consensual. When you're talking about traditional culture, again, you're talking about whole family lines coming together to ensure that this marital bond is going to work out properly. So not only are you talking about the families communicating and going back and forth and ensuring that all things are in place, divination is going to be done over and over and over again, right? To make sure, like, is this couple meant to be? What kind of sacrifices do they need to do? It's a whole process when we're talking about it from a traditional perspective. So I don't, to answer your question, I wouldn't say that there's a specific age. And I will Adissa, if you understand what we're saying here, maybe you can answer that part. Is there a specific age like that? It's like, no, this person cannot have sex before this age or what have you in Yoruba culture and Ifá tradition, okay? Bella Black, you're saying, what about age difference in the context of what you're saying, like having like sexual relationships? Typically, if it's two consenting adults, I don't think that makes a real big difference. If two people are making an informed decision, so it's consensual, I mean, like, people actually know what they're doing, because it could be two adults and one or both could not be mentally stable or mentally able to process whatever decision that they're trying to make when it comes to sex. So, once we're dealing with people who know what they're doing, it's usually okay. Forcing somebody is never okay. And we're going to get to that too. So this question, okay, so you're saying yes. Sorry about it. So you're saying yes, you're talking about that the major age. Yeah, it basically is like we got two people consenting, and they're making healthy, informed decisions. It's not a big deal otherwise. So, sorry, going back. How can a woman protect herself from the negative energy of other women her husband is having sex with? Which is a really good question. And it actually goes both ways. I just presented it this way because this is how the question was written, but it applies to a man on the other end of this as well, right? So, the best form of protection, you guys, is going to be separation. If it's possible, just stop having sex with the partner or separate with the partner if that's what divination indicates that you need to do, right? If that is not a possibility, there are protections that you can get through the Ifá system to help you out with that. So you're going to have some traditional cleansing rituals available. Obviously, Ebo, Akoshe, all can help you out with this dynamic. That being said, that's an ongoing process, right? So if they are continuously sleeping with other people and you are still in that relationship with them, you are going to have to continuously engage in these processes to cleanse yourself and to keep your energy as pure as possible. That's the reality of it. So usually the best form of advice there is to just leave that situation alone. Okay. Going back to you guys' age question, this is saying there's no specific age, but at least you must have matured enough before you start having sex. I think that's what he means there. So yes. Alrighty. So let's see. Got a few more questions here. So you're saying SSC, does Iyami play a big part in men having luck with women? That would typically be more so Oshun, but they can. They can. It's a good question, actually, because they can if it comes to something like that they're being blocked or cursed and they're dealing with something that they need to appease Iyami for, because that can stop the flow there. But typically, Oshun, Oshun energy is going to play a more role. Even so, Shango, they're going to play more of a role in attraction and things like that, magnetism and so forth. Alrighty. Does Ifá condemn or accept same-sex or bisexual relationships? So I covered this before in a different live because it was relevant to the sexual aspects of this live stream. I am going to talk about this briefly, not get stuck in this energy. As I said before, this is not my personal opinion. People are free to do what they want. I don't make judgments on anybody for what they do. But, we're talking about it from the perspective of tradition and what the Odu said. So there's no specific Odu that directly condemns same-sex or bisexual relationships for every single individual. That being said, there are certain Odu that indicate that, a man and a woman should be in a relationship, in a partnership together, right? These are usually revealed during individual readings where it may come out that a person should not be involved in a homosexual relationship, and that could be for so many different reasons based on their destiny path. A lot of times it's going to have to do with children, procreation. So, when we're talking about procreation in the perspective of tradition, we're talking about traditional procreation, two people having sex in order to make a child, not artificial insemination and these other means that people nowadays use scientifically in order to, make babies come through outside of natural order, right? And so with that being the case, a homosexual relationship does not support that reality. Somebody may actually need to have a child, like an ancestor needs to come through in order to do something in that person's life. They might even be blessing that person through that dynamic. And if that person does not have a biological child, then they won't be able to actually fulfill part of their destiny because that's what they were meant to do. So that is a major reality, okay? Balance is also very important when we're talking about homosexual relationships. So everything in nature has a masculine, feminine balance to it, right? And so that's what sexual relationships are about within human connection, male, female energy, masculine, feminine energy, all right? So we talked about before one of the primary purposes of sexual relationships is for procreation. That can only happen naturally with a man or a woman. That's just the way we were built as human beings. So from their perspective, heterosexual relationships basically fulfill that natural order, that purpose, all right? The reproductive purpose for sex. That's the reality of it. And I know a lot of people, have that question. That's how it's laid out in the tradition. Doesn't mean that you cannot practice the Ifá tradition if you are involved in a homosexual relationship. It may mean that you do have taboos specifically related to that. So, you need to check out that reality for yourself. SSC, you're asking, is Oshun as a whole a part or or just one aspect or manifestation of Oshun? Shun. Okay, so Oshun is a water spirit within herself. Iyami are terrestrial spirits. So that's how I'm gonna put it because there's a lot of confusion about Iyami and Oshun being part of each other. I think it's the nomenclature when we're putting together like Iyami, which is the mothers, right? Iyami means the mothers, and sometimes that Yoruba term is used in context to other spiritual forces like Oshun. Okay. And you're very welcome for the answer. Take another comment here. You're saying, oh, I think that was to relation to something else. Yes. So another question which somebody did already bring up in this session is, what does Ifa teach about oral and anal sex? So understand that our sexual organs are sacred points of creation and release, intake and release, right? So when they're used outside of these natural functionalities, those acts are viewed as being misaligned. They're out of balance at the end of the day, right? Anal sex in particular is seen as taboo because it reverses the natural order of elimination and creation. The anus is meant to release waste in particular, right? Specifically waste, all right? Whereas, when we're talking about anal sex, it is the opposite. So we're reversing the order of things. Is intaking an organ versus releasing something that it was naturally designed to do. So in Ifa, that's considered to be inordinate and out of balance. Oral sex is a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more nuance there, right? Because the sexual organs were not meant to be taken on in the oral cavity. But that being said, it's not like a strict do or something like that that says you cannot do this. Okay, so IFA doesn't necessarily legislate these acts that are an act of oral sex as a moral crime or what have you, but they're generally regarded as being improper uses of our sexual energies. Again, we're talking about the notion of bonding and creative procreation or what have you, which is a form of creativity, obviously. Oral sex, even though there's no explicit Odu that talks about that, it's not resulting in anything. Same thing with masturbation, right? Oral sex is just the release of the sexual energy. It is not the creation. You can't create a baby in that process. That's the reality of it. As far as bonding and connection, I guess that would be on an individual basis. Health wise, it actually can cause many health problems. A lot of people don't really understand. It can cause a whole lot of health problems when engaged in with the wrong people, obviously, and in the wrong way. Who was that? I think it was Michael Douglas. He ended up getting oral cancer through, you know, performing oral sex on. I don't know if it was women or just his wife or what, but I remember it coming out that his health problems were due to that particular notion. So again, it's not to condemn anybody or anything like that. This is just what the tradition says. You have to make your own decisions related to those notions. Um, you're saying here what the body does, the soul remembers. A condom protects the body, but only evil pele, good character, and warrior awareness protect the spirit. I say, for sure. Even so, the notion of a condom, hey, you have to even understand where all that comes from. I mean, yes, it's supposed to serve as a form of protection, but that's not natural either, right? We're not supposed to, because when we're talking about sex, again, we're talking about sacred divine connections here. And so when you use a condom, you're actually losing that sacred bond that you're supposed to be creating with, or you're losing part of it. You're not getting the fullness of it. Technically, you should be having sex raw, just to put it bluntly. Okay. Because again, sex was meant for the connection between married people. It was meant to bond people, to put people closer together, for people to have children or offspring. There are natural birth control remedies in Ifa tradition, all right, Yoruba culture, even so, that you can take and you can use without having to use rubbers or anything that is going to go between the skin of you and another person when you're involved in a sexual act, because this you're not supposed to be doing that. It's the reality of it. So yeah, you're asking what about oral sex being used as a prelude to intercourse and not being the end in and of itself? That's a good question. So that's why I said oral sex. It has a lot of nuance to it, right? Because yes, it may not be like the full act itself, but still the reality is like it's not really balanced, because that's not what your mouth was meant to be used for. Your mouth was meant to be used to eat, right? To intake food. And occasionally if it's not going down the right way, or is there something else going on, you vomit. But vomit is actually not the natural process. Things are supposed to be going the opposite way. Vomiting is when you have uh, that particular problem, that means that there's some imbalance going on with you. So that's not what it's for. Again, I'm not making a judgment call on anybody. You do whatever you desire to do. I'm just telling you from traditional protocol, this is what we're looking at. Ifa, everything in Ifa is about balance, is about alignment. So you do with the information that you choose to do with it. Yes. SSC, you're saying you were told that Oshun was a part of Yami, along with a few other Orishas like Eshu and Yimoya. I get you. I understand you, but um, there's some things in there to me logically that don't make sense, because the Orishas are elemental forces and they have their own domains of control or what have you. And you're talking about Oshun, which is a water energy, Iyami, which is a earth. Those are earth-based energies. So you have to go with the orientation to those narratives that fit you the best. I'll say it that way. Going back to it, what does Ifa teach about incest? So incest being two blood relatives engaging in sexual intercourse with each other, whether there is a consensual relationship or not. So incest is considered an absolute taboo in Yoruba culture and in the Ifa tradition. So culturally, no, this is not a thing, right? Even when we're talking about Yoruba people who are of the Islamic faith, this is not a thing where blood relatives, very closely connected blood relatives, should be in a sexual relationship with each other, even if it's something that they desire to do, right? Sexual contact between blood relatives violates moral law, disrupts lineage order, and it brings some heavy consequences within the culture, the community. So you want to be careful with that dynamic, all right? As I said before, it exists heavily at their cultural level, but it can also appear within a person's Odu. But beyond that, before you even get into Ifa, like the culture is like, no, we don't do that. That's not a part of, our customs, our belief systems, or what have you. Another comment. Let's see. I can't have any more children. My partner wants a child. We thought about surrogacy. Technically, I'm not sure. For our unit is in alignment since I can't produce a child. That I would say check on. Do Ifa divination. Do the reading to see if, first and foremost, if you two are aligned, right? Especially if you're not married yet. Even if you are, it's still useful to check and see if you are aligned. But if you're not, definitely before you take those steps. And, even if surrogacy is okay for you, as a couple to go down that route, or what would be best for you all. Ifá perspectives on sexual trauma and healing. All right. So, sexual abuse, right? Survivors of sexual abuse and assault. How can Ifá help out with this? I was asked about this. So there's many traditional remedies that a person can engage with in the tradition to help them to overcome sexual trauma, sexual abuse, and things that they've gone through in the past. And it definitely helps. It can be just as effective or more effective, I think, a lot of times than even therapy and things like that we utilize in the Western world, right? Healing often comes through, rituals, remedies that remove that energetic weight from that person so they're not constantly reliving that experience and rehashing it over and over again. So if you are affected by this, I definitely encourage you all to seek out Ifá consultation to see what are the proper steps for you, because it can be different for everybody, just like pretty much anything else in the tradition. You might be having a particular problem, and what you're told to do can be completely different than somebody else having that same exact issue. Greetings, RME. How are you? Thank you for joining us. Thank you for showing up. Alrighty, so what is Ifá's stance on sexual coercion within marriage or a partnership? So this is never a good thing. Forcing somebody is what I mean. I don't want to say the word because these social media platforms get triggered sometimes when you say certain words, but you guys know what I mean. Basically forcing someone to engage in a sexual relationship. This is never viewed as a good thing. It is a violation of Iwa Pele, even within a marital relationship or partnership. All right. In the tradition, culturally, in Yoruba society, there are some nuances there, right? So in a lot of traditional cultures, oftentimes if a couple is married, is seen as their right and or duty to be sexually active with each other. So it may not be as easily brought to the forefront by a person who has been violated in that way, particularly a woman, if she has been violated in that way by her husband, because it's so much nuance. It's like kind of seen as his right to be in a relationship with her, but still he shouldn't be violent toward her. He shouldn't violate her or force her into those connections. Will it really come forward in society is highly unlikely in a way that you would see it done in the Western world, though, right? You're asking, are sexual traumas tied to someone reincarnation? Sometimes, absolutely. It could be. They come back into this experience and maybe what they did before, if you mean it that way. Are you saying like the trauma that they experienced before or the trauma that they perpetrated before? Which one are you referring to? Because actually it could be both. If like somebody left and they had unresolved sexual trauma and they never really dealt with it, they may have to come back into this experience to resolve all of that. Definitely, if they perpetuated sexual trauma against somebody else and they didn't reconcile that before they left, then they are likely going to experience some type of trauma from that, whether it looks like them actually being violated when they come back to have a new experience, or their family members, or something else altogether. So, yeah. Another question I got from you guys is, can ancestral sexual trauma affect descendants? That's actually what we were just talking about. How is it healed? So definitely repeated patterns of violation, shame, misuse of sexual power can pass through lineages. I talked about this in a previous live stream. It can definitely show up over and over again. You see this quite often, even so in just, regular society, where one person endured like sexual abuse or trauma, and then the bloodline. You just keep seeing the same pattern throughout the bloodline. Somebody experienced molestation at a young age, and usually too it'll be like the exact same age where it starts to happen over and over and over again. Until somebody cleans that up, they reconcile it for their bloodline. And you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what you guys are going to do and proceed to do it, because it's not a pretty thing to keep going through that. It can happen in both ways. It can happen by somebody continuously being violated, or it can happen by somebody continuously, their family line, somebody continuously violating people over and over again. It's usually actually both ways when it comes to those dynamics. Ifa addresses these issues through those ancestral connection rituals, elevation rites, and other traditional remedies. So it could be Evo, it could be a kosher. It really just depends, again, on the family line, what they need to resolve those issues. You are strongly encouraged to reconcile those issues. You're always encouraged to reconcile any ancestral issues, because they can affect you and your lineage for generations, sadly. Um, yes, so they can remove that sludge, so to speak. How can a man cleanse or release the energy that he picks up from a woman that he has? This is a question that I got before. Again, I put it in the way it was asked, but it can apply both ways, right? A woman cleansing energy from a man that she got negative energy from. Even so, it could be in relation to any type of sexual relationship that has gone down. So, same thing there. The elbow, the crochet, it might be other special cleansing rituals that individual needs to remove unwanted sexual energy. There's so many things that you can do to this, so many ways to remove energetic bonds, even so, right? Soul ties and things like that. So many things in the tradition that can be used for these purposes. Again, you always want to just do the work to get Ifa divination and figure out what you need to do specifically, because it's not, I can't just say everybody needs to do X, Y, Z. It really depends on each person's situation, right? So, Buffalo Wins, you're asking, can you speak on the sexual taboos of a priest? My ex is an owl, and oral is taboo for him to give, but he can receive. So, I already talked about this. When it comes to sexual taboos for a Babalawo, it ultimately is based on their personal taboos or what have you. So, that particular situation, you know, that's if that's what he told you and you believe him, I'm not saying when I say it that way, I'm not saying not to believe him. I'm just saying if that's what he told you and that's the belief system, you guys just have to operate within those particular dynamics. But every priest is different. Like, that's his taboos. That's not the taboos for every Ifa priest, that he cannot perform like oral sex or something like that. Let's see. Even so, like, the Odu really doesn't outright condemn oral sex. It may be some things in there related to some people, but I don't think it just outright condemns oral sex like that. Anal sex, yes, like we talked about before. So, Ifa perspectives on sexual shame and identity. So, female menstruation and sex. This is a common question too, because a lot of times this is shunned in a lot of religions, that female menstrual cycle is dirty, she's unclean, and so forth and so on. Ifa just understands this as a natural cleansing process. This is a woman shedding unfertilized eggs. She's removing waste products from her reproductive tract. She's also removing spiritual or energetic sludge from that of her partners if she's sexually active, things like that. All right. So menstruation is ultimately a space of cleansing and renewal. It's that body's way of just presenting balance. This is why it's so important for women and even so men to be careful with who they sleep with, right? And it's also important for reciprocity dynamics to take place. So a woman should be properly taken care of. You shouldn't just be dumping everything in her and not giving back to her, because you're actually, for a man, I mean, you're creating an imbalance if you are doing that. A lot of times people will even say stuff about like prostitution, for instance, and say a lot of negativity there. But actually, if a man is paying a prostitute, there is restitution, reciprocity going on. So like he's releasing himself in her if that's the way it goes down. And she's cleansing him, helping him to cleanse energetically, but he's paying her for it. So there's a sense of reciprocity. There's actually some relationships that people are in, and it's not considered prostitution per se, but the man is doing nothing but just releasing in her. He's not taking care of her in any kind of way. Even so, could be using her, taking advantage of her, getting money from her, and so forth and so on. And he's creating an energetic balance for himself. So he's not going to experience the things that he thinks that he should be experiencing in life when he's engaged in that type of behavior, because that's not reciprocity going on, right? And I'm not saying that anybody should be going out and engaging in prostitution. I'm not saying that's even like morally sound according to the tradition, because it is not. But it is a form of reciprocity that people need to understand when they engage in sexual relationships, because that's what's happening. When a man releases his semen in her, he's also releasing energetic debris and refuse inside of a woman, and she's cleaning it up through her menstrual cycle and pushing it out and removing it. But like she's constantly taking these things in, they can negatively impact her as well. So there's a whole lot of things that go on with sex, then beyond the physical, as I said before. Now, for if a woman is dealing with any type of irregularities, discomfort, or what have you during her menstrual cycle, when she's going through perimenopause or the menopausal phase, or what have you, these are irregularities and imbalances. All right. And so she can absolutely seek out traditional support to help her. There's a crochet, there are herbal remedies that you can use in the tradition if you are having issues with this lady. So you don't have to suffer, or you don't have to just deal with allopathic medicine or what have you if you're not comfortable with that. Understand that there are ways that you can be helped with that dynamic. What does Ifá teach about sex during menstruation? I got this question a few times. So when it comes to menstrual blood, it's very, very sacred, powerful force, guys. All right, it's creation, is release, as I talked about before. You're releasing the creative force, your ability to create, because that's the unfertilized egg being removed from her body, right? She's also releasing energetic debris from herself, from her mate, right? Even when a woman bleeds after she has a baby, it's not like the traditional menstrual cycle, but she's also releasing a lot of that energetic flow from that child that she just had. So it's a very necessary cleansing process. All right. That being said, it's energetically charged. So we don't just use menstrual blood for anything. This is a time to release, to remove things from the body. All right. You should not be engaging in sexual intercourse during this time, because it's a time for release. You're moving things, not a time for her to be penetrated in that way. I know sometimes, situations happen. You might just want it that time, but y'all might need to figure out another way to do what you need to do, because that's not something that really should be done according to the traditions, because it's interfering with that purification process. Okay. And it can cause quite a few problems moving forward. It can cause some energetic issues, spiritual issues with the man and the woman for that matter. So yeah, you figure out something else, to do during that time. Many lineages hold that engaging in sex during this time can lead to ritual contamination, stagnation, and so many different things. All right. This is a taboo for pretty much everyone, that you should not, well, for everyone, not pretty much, you should not engage in sex during a woman's menstrual cycle. That's just the reality of it. Okay. Let's see. So you're saying then Danny BX, I love you. I'm new here, been watching your videos for about 2 weeks. Really enjoy how you teach and deliver this information. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Thank you all for joining us. Everybody who is coming in on both, well, all platforms, wherever you are, I appreciate you. So now another question, guys, is how does Ifá approach gender identity and trans experiences? According to the tradition, one more time, according to the tradition, right? Certain aspects of a person's life are understood as fixed, right? You can't change it. The day you were born, the day that you have agreed to die or to transition from this earth, and your biological sex, meaning the organs that you were born with and the orientation of those organs, all right, during your lifetime. So, everybody came in here with a particular energetic signature. If you were born with a penis, then you are in a male orientation, masculine energy predominant. If you were born with a vagina, you are in a female orientation, feminine energy. All right. Yes, there are certain such things as hermaphrodites, which are anomalies. All right. And in those cases, you want to consult Ifá to determine what to do, even at the onset of that. So if a parent has a child that, is hermaphrodite, for people who may not understand what that word is born with both sexual organs. Person who is dealing with that, they want to consult Ifá for their child to figure out what to do. Right? So sometimes, like in Western medicine, they'll usually remove one of the organs so that the child only deals with the other organ. That can be very tricky because they may be oriented towards their other sex, and now their other organ is gone. So we will have to figure that out. But that's an anomaly. That is not the standard. That is not typical. Okay, you're not able to change those things according to tradition. So I'm not saying scientifically because obviously it's available out there. I'm saying from a traditional perspective, you're not supposed to change those dynamics within yourself. Ifa sees that as a corruption, a distortion. Okay. If you're experiencing challenges in this area as far as your identity sexually, it is best to consult with Ifa, consult with a trusted Ifa priest if you're into the tradition to determine what you need to do about it, what's causing these feelings, and how can you orient yourself properly that you are aligned with your destiny. Again, that is traditional wisdom. That is not coming from me specifically. And I iterate that point because it's nothing to do with how I feel about it. It's all to do with how the tradition presents, the masculine and the feminine energy. Menstrual blood is the blood of life, a powerful cleansing and renewal force. During this time, a woman's Ashe resets. Elders teach that it should not be mixed with another's. Absolutely, it shouldn't be. And it shouldn't also, thank you for bringing that up because it reminded me too to say this. You should not use menstrual blood in ritual work. That is an abomination. I know women do it, especially when we talk about like the diaspora practices, the hoodoo and all of that is a common thing. Even growing up in the South, I used to hear people talk about it all the time. Woman using her menstrual blood, she cooks food for the man in order to keep him or in order to get him or what have you. You're not supposed to do that. That is against traditional protocol. That is an abomination to use your menstrual blood in that way. Now we're going to talk about sacred sexual energy and the Orisha. So going back to a lot of the conversations that you guys have been asking about the different Orishas that are involved in sex. So there are a number of Orishas that are involved in this process at some level. We're going to focus in first on some of the primordial energies. So these are the energies that were here from the beginning when it comes to sex, Iyami and Eshu, right? So when we're talking about these two forces, they ultimately embody the origin of sexual energy itself. That's that raw creative ability, guys. The polarity, the duality, male and female energy. All right. This is generative force. This is the potentiality, the ability to create at that level. So especially when we're talking about Iyami, we're talking about the womb, the darkness, that creative matrix that exists within a female's body so that she can carry life, she can gestate life and bring it forward out of the womb, right? Eshu represents the active spark, that erect phalanx, where he is the initiator, the activator of the life force energy itself, the movement, right? Eshu represents movement as well. So that's at the primordial level, right? The generative level of sex. Both of these particular energies basically act as the portal, the gateways, the thresholds in which life can come into being, into the earth from the astral realm. Okay. Um, we're talking about passion and desire and magnetism and things of that nature. This is where Oshun and Shango come from. This is who most people think about first when they say, sexual energy, especially Oshun. They just think about her sweet waters and her feminine energy and all of this good stuff. Definitely, she embodies that notion, the sweetness, the sensuality, and the attraction. She governs pleasure and intimacy, and even so those emotional bonds that we talked about before, because that is one of the primary purposes of sex, to bond people closer to each other. Now, Shango, his energy complements this dynamic from the masculine perspective. So he's that fiery charisma. He's also about magnetism and attraction, confidence, male virility, right? That drive, that desire, okay, passion. Both of those energies are so vital because otherwise, without them, sex wouldn't be pleasurable, and so nobody would want to do it. So they make people want to do it. So this is one of the reasons why they are going to be first and foremost, when we talk about sex and things like that. But as we just talked about before, we first have to have that foundation with Iyami and Eshu, because that's that kind of blank palette where creativity starts. Eshu governs creativity itself. Both of them do, Eshu and Iyami. They govern the notion of creativity itself, bringing things into being, right? So these two, as far as Shango and Oshun, and there are mythological narratives that these two forces were even so married, right? Together, they represent that pleasure aspect, as I talked about before. That's necessary for people to get together, for you to be attracted to someone, for you to just have that spark or that desire and just feel like, I would love to be with this particular person, because everybody you meet, you're not sexually attracted to. But that's that Oshun and Shango energy when you start to feel that magnetism and that attraction towards a particular person, and you want to involve yourself sexually with them. Now, from a utilitarian and functional perspective, we have Umoja and Ogun. These forces are not said to be married, but they do both operate from that level of utilitarianism, like sex as a function list. It has to be done. It's a means to an end, right? Without it, like I said earlier, we don't have progeny, we don't have offspring, we don't have ancestors, because nobody's being made if we don't have sex. So Umoja's role is in governing that fertility and that reproductive process, the continuity, because she oversees generational aspects of our life, the ancestral aspects of our lives. So she's looking at it from a perspective of continuously nurturing the family, right? Sex as a duty, as a responsibility to continue the bloodline. So she's going to basically keep the family together. Because you can have that that Oshun and Shango energy going where you have the magnetism and drive, but they can be really short-lived if it's not based on a strong foundation. So that feminine aspect of Umoja, the ocean, that deeper level, because Oshun is, she's shallow, she's river, so forth, so on. Her role is very important, but she looks at the shallow aspects of life, the immediate family, things like that. Umoya is more so over the generational aspects of life. So she is going to ensure continuity. She's that bond, that like the glue that really keeps the family together from generation to generation. Ogun, again, the strength, the persistence, the protection, right? He's the protector. So he's going to ensure that the family stays together from their perspective, that survival instinct. We're going to keep going, we're going to keep pushing through, right? So that we can make sure that our family continues. So these are both very much so, sex as a means to an end, as I said before. And then we also have moral order and restraint coming in through Obatala energy, right? So everybody has that sexual drive innately, right? No matter whether you've been exposed to it or not. Obviously, the earlier the exposure, and the more the exposure, and the more inordinate the exposure, then somebody's sexual drive can be very chaotic and disruptive. But even so, everybody has it. Obatala's job is to keep it in order, all right, to keep us with a sense of purity, wisdom whenever we are engaging in these sexual relationships, similar to what we were talking about before, not just being with any and everybody, but making sound, resolute decisions about who you're being with, why you're being with that person, and making it make sense at the end of the day. So he reminds us to use that sexual energy in balance and with a sound purpose. Okay, he ensures that that passion and that drive, our creative force, remain guided by a sense of discipline. Right? You might want it, but not to just run up on anybody and jump their bones, so to speak, especially when it comes to men. So they have to still have self-control, even women, restraint, things like that. Conscious intent whenever you are engaging in sex, understanding that it's more than just you having sex with somebody, but that it means something, that it should be in a proper relationship. I'm going to take a few questions now. I do have one more section left, so guys, feel free to go ahead and add any questions or comments that you have as we are going through. So you said you have a lot of issues with your menstruation. You need 2 blood transfusions when you were 16, almost died. Wow, sorry about that. 3 days before my initiation, my period came. Sorry, definitely about that. Yes, but you should be able to, connect with your Ifá priest or priestess, whoever you're working with. See if they can help you remedy any of those issues if it's still a problem for you. All right, you're saying that helps. Cecile believes. I don't. He said Hizile believes that for all our that a man can have multiple wives because women are powerful, but that woman does not need more than one husband. That giving oral hinders prayers. So yeah, when it comes to like within the culture itself, like I'm not gonna say like the Christian dynamics because they moved away from the polygamy aspect, but Yoruba culture at its foundation, it it's a polygamous culture, right? And so yeah, not polyandrous. So like women do not marry multiple men. A man can marry multiple women. So that's the case for really any Babalawo. That being said, it should be ordinary. It's not like you just can marry a whole bunch of women and just keep making babies all over the place. You have to exercise responsibility with it. So you should only marry more than one wife if you are capable of caring for them. But yeah, there may be some elay specific things related to the oral sex and things of that nature. You said a particular bath can shield from STDs, both physical and spiritual. I don't know if this. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't understand the last sentence quite. You said also that a certain bath with a blessed prepared soap protects from STDs. Okay. I just don't know if all of this is common in Ishe say or not. I got you. That there are a lot of things in Isheshe definitely that you can use to remedy issues with STDs and so forth and so on, for sure. Um, it's going to depend on the person. So I want to put like a blanket statement out there, like, yeah, it's one that you're just going to cure all STDs with. I don't know that to be the case. I will just, if you're still here, maybe you can answer that part for us, because that I'm not sure if it's like just one remedy or specific remedies for specific types of STDs, because STDs present differently based on what they are. And so I would imagine it would be different remedies for that. So I got a question on Instagram. You said, what if someone likes the same sex? I did talk about this before. Just to quickly reiterate, Ifa does not see that as being balanced, because our sexual organs are meant for procreation, for bonding, and things like that. Um, there's a masculine and feminine dynamic in every aspect of nature. You cannot procreate naturally with male on male or female on female. So we're talking about tradition and coming to it from a stance of that notion, not from the notion of we're going to use science or other things to create children outside of natural order. So homosexuality doesn't fit within that dynamic. We're talking about a traditional practice that is heavily dependent on ancestors, right? So ancestral lineage and heritage mean like you got to make children, in order for the ancestors to come back into being and to have their life cycle. That cannot happen in a homosexual relationship naturally within a homosexual relationship. So that's, kind of the gist of that. So if you got any more questions, guys, related to the topic, feel free to drop them in. We're gonna, close up walking the path of Ifa, transformation and healing, guys. So definitely Ifa teaches us that sexual energy is part of natural order. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to shun and say you shouldn't do it, or anything like that. There is no such thing as like a vow of abstinence or something like that in Ifa itself. There may be some individual cases, but it's not like the whole Ifa priesthood takes on a vow of abstinence, all right, chastity or what have you. It's not going to happen, right? Right. Most Babalawas are pretty well active when it comes to that notion. But when we want to use it in a proper context, right? It becomes a sacred force that actually sustains and replenishes life, not retracts from life. All right. Sexual pleasure is not forbidden. Instead, it's meant to be embraced through a space of balance and alignment, guys. If you are dealing with any type of shame, guilt, uncertainty around your sexual energy, Ifa provides so many different solutions and remedies. So I encourage you guys to seek out help through traditional support. Go seek out an Ifa reading if you're dealing with something in specific that can help you to get the answers that you need. Okay. Well, just you saying there. I think you're trying to say there are many occult or spell words to protect yourselves from STDs. So yes, he's saying there are multiple ones that can help you out with STDs. What does Ifa say about oral sex? Yes, you came in late. So I did talk about that. I'm not going to reiterate because I actually answered that question several times, but you can definitely go back in the live stream and catch that answer. It's on YouTube, so you can catch it there. And you are saying thank you on issue day. Ashe to everyone. So, guys, if you're seeking any type of deeper transformation, you're ready to explore more about living in alignment with Ifa, definitely check us out on the Asanee 44 website. We offer Ifa divination, rituals, pretty much anything that you need, because we are a full service Ifa temple. So check us out on the website. The next live stream I plan on doing, it will be on November the 3rd. 2025. I hope that's a Monday because I grabbed the date real quickly. We're going to talk about astral projection, parallel universe beliefs according to the Ifá tradition, because that was a requested topic. And guys, too, if you have more requested topics, drop it in the comments, or you can DM me or email me so that we can get some of those out, some of the things that you're interested in discussing. With that being said, I am going to go ahead and close up here. Ashe, please have a very blessed and beautiful day as always.